Hey y'all, thanks for stopping in. Got another one here from dailymail.com. Trump's trial will electrify the world, but his enemies, so desperate to see him locked up, may have made a monumental tactical blunder, writes Andrew Neil. I'm not sure who Andrew Neil is, but I do find that title interesting and I want to know more, so let's read it. It's hard to blame Donald Trump for apparently nodding off during the first day of his hush money trial in New York on Monday, aka Dozy Dawn. Yet it's the first ever criminal trial of a former U.S. president, and he's the only leading presidential candidate ever to face criminal proceedings. Add that to the chance he could go to jail if he's found guilty, and you might expect Trump to be paying close attention. But the early stages of the trial have been dominated by arcane legal arguments about procedural points and the interminable process of choosing a jury. Now an unavoidable feature of American justice. Interminable? That could continue for another week or more, so despite all the hoopla surrounding his trial and the massive media circus which attends it, Trump and the rest of us should be prepared to be bored for a little longer. But patience will have its just rewards, for this trial is the stuff of tabloid dreams. Porn stars, hush money, dodgy lawyers, Playboy bunnies, illicit sex, and cover-ups, which means it will find a massive audience far beyond those usually interested in Trump for mundane matters like his politics. I mean, we'll see. Trump is already polarizing enough, but maybe that does add a little bit more to it. Well, we'll just have to find out. But the circus, which has set up its big top on the 15th floor of a rather dingy Manhattan court building, will be captivating most of America soon enough, and much of the rest of the world too. Whether it will also provide a compelling case against Trump in another matter, Dozy Dawn faces 88 criminal charges in cases spread across 4 states. Many Democrats who would love to see him go down for this one or all the indictments are dismayed that the first one up is the New York case that they, along with legal experts and political commentators, fear is the weakest, and that, even if Trump is found guilty, voters will struggle to understand what he did was really criminal. And in my opinion, I think a lot of voters are still going to vote for him, even if he is locked up behind bars. I think it would actually be hilarious to see them in New York build another wing to house Donald Trump and Secret Service separate from the regular population, and then he get a bunch of votes and still get elected. That would just be great. But this also plays to Trump's oft-repeated claim that he is the victim of political persecution by Democratic activists, which he is, including many in the Biden administration who are using the law against him because they fear they can't beat him in the ballot box. And that's true in my opinion, that, when Donald Trump asked a question about Biden, who wasn't even running against him in the 2020 election, when Trump called Ukraine and said, hey, I kind of heard some stuff, Biden was out here bragging about getting the prosecutor fired and using American tax dollars as leverage. I'm just curious more about that. I'm the president of the United States. It's my job to make sure it's on the up and up. And, Democrats basically said that Trump is going after his political opponent, and they impeached him for it. Thankfully, it didn't pass the Senate, but Democrats set the example that, you'll get impeached if you as the president try to go after your political opponent, right? The person that's running against you. Now, in this case, Donald Trump is the front runner for the Republican Party. And at the time, it was actually before 2020, but it was for the 2020 election. Joe Biden hadn't even announced that he was going to be in the running. So when Trump asked about Joe Biden to Ukraine, he wasn't even asking about his political opponent. He was simply asking about the former vice president that preceded him. Yet the Democrats spun it and ran an impeachment trial on Trump. You know what I mean? But then we come to this case here, and the hypocritical Democrats are now using federal judges, federal funds to go after Biden's number one rival, who is actually running, who is the front runner for the Republican Party. And yet, no impeachment for Biden. See how this goes? And that's why we need to make sure that we're voting for good people on the local levels. Ones we send to D.C. as our representatives, as well as our local mayors, governors, things like that. We need to make sure that all these people are American-loving and not self-serving, and definitely not a part of the cult. because what we have today is an accumulation of years, decades of just that. People going out there, filling out the box for president and leaving everything else blank, or just voting down ticket, looking at the D or the R next to a person's name, which is something that, I'd like to see actually removed from ballots. Know the person that you're voting for more than just if they're a Democrat or a Republican. But let's continue here. Okay. The way he sees it, the proceedings have all the hallmarks of a show trial. Trump will be judged by an overwhelmingly Democratic jury in a trial proceeded over by a Democratic judge brought by a Democratic district attorney. All of which have questionable motives, right? Manhattan, from where the jury will be drawn, voted 87% for Joe Biden in 2020. Almost 100 prospective jurors were wheeled out on Monday, only for 50% to be dismissed immediately because, on a show of hands, they admitted they could not be fair or impartial. That's probably just a bunch of people trying to get out of jury duty. The selection process will no doubt root out the most egregious bias against Trump, but in the end, the jury will still lean overwhelmingly Democrat. The presiding judge, Juan Merchan, donated to the Biden-Harris campaign in 2020 and to other progressive causes. The amounts were small, but it illustrates, the direction he leans. On his way into court yesterday, the defendant said Judge Merchan was Trump-hating and totally conflicted. District Attorney Alvin Bragg, a left-wing Democrat, campaigned for election pledging to get Trump. He wasn't sure for what, but promised he'd find some charge to drag Trump into court. Since indicting Trump, he's raised $850,000 for his re-election campaign. So, at this point, it's pretty obvious. Alvin Bragg is trying to deliver on his promise that got him elected. And the U.S. justice has always been too influenced by politics, but is now so politicized by Democrats and Republicans alike for their own ends, it barely qualifies anymore as independent and impartial. I'd argue that it's more politicized by Democrats and less politicized by Republicans, but just depends on, I guess, what level of Republicans you're talking about. Yet, even in what Trump and his followers see as a rigged trial, it is not clear that District Attorney Bragg has a sufficiently compelling case to secure a conviction. Right, just like all the other cases they threw at Trump while he was president and since then, is basically a witch hunt, and nothing has ever stuck to him. So here's the grounds that the case is basically even being brought. In 2006, it is alleged that Trump had a sexual encounter with a porn star who goes by the stage name Stormy Daniels. 10 years later, on the eve of the 2016 presidential election, Trump's then lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, paid her $105,000, widely regarded as hush money, to keep her quiet until the election was out of the way. It is not illegal under New York state law to pay someone off to bury a sex scandal. See, hush money is not actually illegal or anything like that. Cohen was reimbursed in stages through 2017 via a monthly retainer disguised, it is alleged, as payments for legal services, which also compensated him for the tax he'd have to pay on this income. Okay, so here's the reality of what actually happened there. Cohen was a lawyer for Trump, and like most lawyers, they do all the handling of the situation. Trump is busy with running his campaign, his businesses, things like that. And when things come up, you call the attorney and you say, hey, I got this situation. I need you to handle it. So Cohen took it upon himself. Trump didn't tell him to do this. Cohen took it upon himself to just go ahead and pay Stormy Daniels the hush money. And then he chose to bill Trump for it, where Trump, paying a lawyer on a retainer, simply just pays his monthly bill to the lawyer. What they're trying to claim in this court is that Trump actually knowingly was reimbursing Cohen, essentially. So let's continue. The false accounting is what Bragg has zoomed in on. Even so, such fudging of business records is generally regarded as relatively minor, a misdemeanor rather than more serious criminality or felony, which is what Trump is facing as felony charges, I believe. But to reach the higher level of criminality, Bragg has to show under New York law that Trump was cooking the books with intent to commit a crime, which would turn a misdemeanor into a felony. Just what that crime was is not clear. It could involve the illegal use of campaign funds by paying off a mistress, or using money to aid a presidential candidate by unlawful means, or perhaps it's something to do with tax fraud. It really isn't clear. This is why federal prosecutors who looked at the matter decided not to go down the road, nor did Bragg's predecessor, which means that this situation has already been looked into twice by the district attorney that preceded Bragg, and he chose not to bring the case. And it was also looked into by federal prosecutors who made the same decision, not to bring the charges. But, Bragg ran on he was going to get Trump, so of course he has to try. He's running out of time considering November is only 6 months away. But throwing caution to the wind, the district attorney has doubled down, padding out his indictment by including every invoice, check and ledger entry related to the Cohen payments, giving him a charge sheet against Trump of 34 felonies, each carrying a possibility 4-year jail sentence, which is ridiculous. So far, Bragg has advanced some theories on Trump's actual crime, 3 of which the judge has accepted are worthy of the court's time. No doubt the trial will make plain exactly what Trump is alleged to have done. Stormy plans to testify, so does Karen McDougal, a former Playboy bunny who Trump is said to have had an affair with for months. His friends tell me he was really smitten, and who was paid $120,000 to keep quiet. Cohen will be the prosecution's key witness since he is on a mission to destroy his former boss, but he's already admitted to lying under oath and done 3 years in prison for tax evasion and corporate violations, so he might not be the clinching witness Bragg hopes. Well, he's already a discredited witness, in my opinion, but the trial will take up 4 days a week and last 6 to 8 weeks. Since it's a criminal trial, Trump has to attend every session, which will curb his ability to campaign or raise funds at a time which President Biden is raising tens of millions for his re-election. On the other hand, the trial will give Trump oodles of what he loves most, publicity. Whether that reinforces the pitch for the White House remains to be seen. The show trial aspect could fire up more than just his supporters in sympathy for him. Or the more sordid side of the case could simply repeal independents and moderate Republicans, especially women among whom Trump already polls badly. The Georgia criminal case against Trump, in which he's accused of trying to interfere with the results of the 2020 election, is far more serious than New York charges. But Trump is a lucky man. The Georgia case is in trouble because the district attorney there is mired in scandal for having an inappropriate relationship with her lead prosecutor, amongst other things. That's Fani Willis, and she's got other things to worry about. So New York comes first and might be the only case to be completed this side of the November election. We don't even know if, in the event of a guilty verdict, the prosecution is seeking jail time. Not that being behind bars, which is unlikely, would necessarily stop Trump from running for the White House. I think it would be awesome. And, and to go back a little bit, they mentioned that these charges could cause some people on the fence to actually sympathize with Trump, is actually the case. Apparently, Trump has the highest support of black voters that any Republican has pretty much ever had, from what I understand. And it's because people are relating to Trump in how the justice system is treating him unfairly. But to finish up here, I just got to say, I hope that the people are paying attention to what's going on with Trump and that they see that these, corrupt Democrat-led charges are an attack on them. Like Trump said, they're not just going for him, they're going for all of us. And if they can get to him, they can get to all of us. And so the more people that realize that, the longer it'll take them to put us in pods and feed us bugs. And if you agree with that, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.